Hello, and welcome to Life Science New York's Spotlight Series, a series of conversations with thought leaders and innovators in New York's biomed ecosystem. I'm Win Thurlow, Executive Director of Life Sciences New York, and today I'm joined by one of our new members, Zoe Koulouris, who is the founder and CEO of Transform with Irini, really a terrific company in the management and leadership space, who's new to the ecosystem. We're thrilled to have Zoe with us today. And I want to say, welcome, Zoe. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you, and it's great to be here too. I'm excited to be part of the community.
So, Zoe, we were chatting a little bit before we got on this call. And one of the things I think I said to you is we really like to start these conversations by hearing a bit about you, your background, what brings you here, your connection to the life sciences industry, and some talk about the work that you're doing. So let me ask you where you got your start and what brings you here.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur and product leader with 15 years of experience building and growing companies and leading teams. So I started my career helping start up a healthcare software company in Syracuse. And that experience really got me interested in learning software development, working with the tech teams there. And so after going through a couple of software boot camps, I ended up co-founding a software agency and consultancy in 2016. And started that with three partners. We bootstrapped it to 25 people and a seven-figure business. And I oversaw a lot of our business operations and led our sales and marketing efforts. And in 2022, we ended up getting acquired by one of our clients. They're a larger startup experiencing rapid growth. And I joined as the VP of product in that company. The rate of growth was exciting. It was a whole new experience at the size of that organization and the pace, but it was also very challenging. It unexpectedly, after a few months of joining, the market collapsed and we had to adjust really quickly to a whole new environment. And throughout the course of 18 months, we went through three CTOs and two rounds of layoffs. And at the same time, performance was expected to stay high. And it was my job to keep our teams delivering despite all of that change and challenge. So we invested, the organization and the tech and product organization, we invested a lot in our operational systems, but we kept seeing the same issues, lack of alignment and just dysfunction and fear and things like that. So taking a step back from, I was reflecting on a lot of it and saw it as a systemic issue in tech and common pattern in high growth companies. So um, I see it as startups under pressure to scale quickly, growth outpacing their adaptability because there's finite capacity to change. And then when that happens, leaders tend to really focus on their operations and admin systems. It's more tangible than, and often don't invest as much in their people and their leadership system. So I've realized that leadership is the adaptive force of an organization. And so when that's not intentionally developed, alignment breaks down, and even really strong operations and product strategies can fail and create a disproportionate strain on tech teams because they're expected to execute changes without enough support. So then you end up seeing product and execution issues as a symptom of human systems challenges. So in 2024, I decided to leave the organization specifically to spend a year training with a behavioral science company. I trained and consulted with this company called Grinnell Leadership. They specialize in leadership and organizational development, and they're based in North Carolina. Along the way, I also founded my own company based in New York State and developed a partnership with that company, Grinnell Leadership, so that I could extend those services up here. And so today, through my company Transform with Irini, that's what I'm doing. I'm helping founders, executives, and emerging leaders, specifically and technically and scientifically driven industries, strengthen their leadership and human systems so their organizations can perform well through change.
So I caught a phrase that you used, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that. You talked about leadership, if I heard you correctly, leadership being the adaptive force in an organization. And I'm wondering if you can kind of expand on that. What does that mean to you and for our audience listening as they're thinking about leadership, how do you see leadership being an adaptive force?
Yeah, well, I see it as leaders have the responsibility to have a broader perspective on what's going on in the ecosystem, in their organization, and to develop a system to be able to make necessary changes that others either don't have the perspective on or don't have the ability and courage to execute. So, and leadership is a system throughout the whole organization that connects to organizational systems like your technical systems, like your operational systems, and like your people, your human systems. So it runs through everything you do. And so when that's not developed effectively, or when you don't have, like I mentioned, like you're trying to grow and some systems are like out of balance, then you start the misalignment from that creates challenge within the organization.
I'm also imagining some of our audience, certainly founders, entrepreneurs, researchers, right, who may have some deep technical understanding, academic understanding of particularly in the life sciences of the innovation that they've developed, but really have not had life experiences leading an organization. Talk to me a bit about the challenges that you find that company founders often face when they begin to scale up a startup.
Yeah, that's a really common issue and challenge. And when you start an organization and you're the product leader, the domain expert, I find that those domain experts really care a lot about their products, and their performance and the quality, but don't necessarily have the training and expertise in developing out their human system and the people that can then, or like the delegation that then carry out the scaling it commercially. And so those skills can be developed, definitely. It just takes structure and support. So that's something that I'm specializing in as somebody who's worked in tech and been a product leader and seen that firsthand, especially working with really really strong technical experts that then rely on cross-functional teams and cross-functional support from across a company. So yeah, that's something that is really important to me, and one of the reasons that I'm focused on in life sciences, supporting life sciences companies.
So let's focus a bit on Transform with Irini. Where does your organization come into the mix? And for folks who are interested in knowing more about leadership development, what are the things they should be thinking about as they begin to explore this area?
Yeah, so for my company, excuse me, my business strategy is to extend the capabilities that I mentioned that as an organizational development company, like Grinnell Leadership, up to New York State, specifically in healthcare companies uh, and life sciences, and augmenting the services within our market. And then from a product strategy and approach, I act as an objective catalyst to helping clients that are navigating inflection points and helping them strengthen their human system to achieve better results. So those might be like promotions, like we just talked about, growing in responsibility as your company grows, or rapid growth, bringing new people on and having to develop their skills and capabilities and communication, and then adapting to new technologies as well. So those are a few examples. As an organizational development company, really intentional about the approach. So we always start with developing awareness on and clarity on specific areas to strengthen, and then partnering with clients to design and implement targeted interventions, and then evolving by monitoring and reflecting on results. So in practice, that looks like a few core services, but of course they're tailored to each client specific situation. For individuals, we offer one-on-one coaching for executives and senior leaders in the context of their organization. It's grounded in assessments, 360 feedback, 60 and 90-day goals. So it's a style of coaching is really targeted and interventional within a specific context. And managers are off if this is relevant, say we're coaching a manager that has a supervisor, that we like to bring those folks together to drive alignment between managerial relationships. And then we also offer 4-day intensive workshops called Jumpstart, which is a group coaching format with people from other organizations. So those are a couple opportunities for individuals. And then for teams in the broader org, there's a couple as well that I'd like to point out. One is called the Decathlon. It's a year-long program with 10 learning sessions for up to 12 managers or emerging leaders. So really strengthening that like middle managerial layer to accelerate their leadership capacity and drive alignment, and also to help with horizontal and vertical leadership, so communication vertically and horizontally. So that's one again targeted more for kind of emerging leaders in the company. And then the other one is called a Vital Org Scan. It's an organization-wide assessment and executive retreat that helps executive teams surface the toughest issues that are going on in the organization, and then we facilitate conversation around that and incorporate that into their strategic planning. And what's different about the way we do that is that we don't just do the consulting piece, we also help with the implementation. So we'll, after that retreat, support the actual implementation of whatever was prioritized in that planning session. So across all of it, it's really about helping develop focus and clarity on what areas need to be targeted, and then being an objective facilitator through that so that there's effective change.
And your work is done primarily in person, online. How do you interface with your clients?
In person is definitely preferred. I think it's a really great way to bring people together and connect in person. I like working with people in person, but I'm also open to working remotely.
And tell me, for somebody who's interested in knowing more or trying to figure out whether the services you offer are right for them, when is the right time to reach out to you? Do you need to be at a certain stage in product development? When does that work?
Yeah, so according to like the business life cycle, product life cycle, typically in the growth phase is very common when information flow and communication is starting to get strained, which can lead to some dysfunctions we talked about earlier. Couple examples are if leaders start to lose perspective on the organization because they can't meet with as many people, or there's starting to be some silos going on across departments, making it harder to communicate, starting to strain relationships. Or there's an increase in hiring or promotions to management. So those folks will need some support and strategic thinking. And along those lines, when leaders are stepping into new roles, they need to develop the self-awareness and courage to operate in a new capacity for what's best for the organization, not necessarily for their own team or their previous way of working. So often around scaling, commercialization, bringing new product to market, growth around that, leadership transitions, and so on. And so those are a few ways. And then I tend to work with, like I mentioned, founders, executives, or senior leaders, but typically in the technical and scientifically driven industries. And um, they could be small to medium-sized companies, could be divisions within a larger company, but often it's startups that are navigating growth, family-owned businesses that are navigating next generation of leadership, or like I mentioned, a larger company trying to de-silo. And I do have an example of a medical client that I could share if you think that would
Yeah.
be
Yes,
helpful.
please. Yeah.
So there is a pretty interesting case I just thought was a really good example within the health space of how this kind of work can help. So I had the opportunity to work with a private fertility clinic in North Carolina. They spun out of a hospital system and they were a longtime client of Grinnell Leadership, and I started working with them. So what was going on was the one of the co-founding doctors retired, and the other co-founding doctor, medical director, brought in a few new doctors that bought into the practice at the same time that they were going through a large expansion of physical space. And also, one of the new doctors was a male fertility specialist, so that was new. So there were all these new business capabilities, growth, and change in leadership at the organization, which are good things, but there started to be some pretty significant quality issues showing up. So the director of the lab was really struggling and frustrated. There was some strain going on departmentally, also with the administrative side of things, customer service. So that growth was starting to impact specific areas, and we really weren't sure exactly what the cause was from. So we ran a organizational scan that I mentioned, so we interviewed uh, a bunch of people from the practice, anonymized all of that, and then ran the executive retreat with the cross-functional executive leadership. So all the doctors, the COO, finance folks, a nurse manager, um, director of quality. So they had to go face all of that feedback that from the organization and then participate in a strategic planning effort to get aligned around some specific areas to improve. And then from there, we met with specific folks, or made a day available a month or a couple times a quarter to work with individuals one-on-one, or to help the organization with those specific efforts they had. So that helped. What we found were really able to isolate some specific areas of why the quality issues were happening. So, and then those new doctors really needed to step up their business development. So there was a lot of really healthy discussion from that.
Yeah, you raise really, I think, a critical point, and that is, right, we particularly in the life sciences, right, in a highly regulated, highly sensitive field, the ability to maintain quality and compliance with regulatory requirements while at the same time managing growth, managing employees and the like is really a daunting challenge. And I want to encourage folks who are listening today, watching today, to reach out to Zoe and her team at Transform with Irini. How can folks best connect with you, Zoe?
Yeah, so you can schedule a consultation with me on my website or reach out to me directly. Usually I like to start with an initial consultation just to talk about what your challenges are, where you are, what stage you are in your business, and then we can follow up if we feel like it's a good fit, move forward, put together a tailored proposal and continue the discussion from there.
Well, as always, these conversations go faster than I'd like, and I'm afraid we've run out of time. But I want to thank you, Zoe Koulouris, founder and CEO of Transform with Irini. You can find Transform with Irini's contact information in the chat. I encourage you to reach out to Zoe and her team. I think you'll find those conversations to be incredibly helpful. And Zoe, we want to thank you for spending some time with us today and wish you all the best as you continue on your growth.
Thank you, and I'm really excited to be part of the Life Sciences New York community.
Well, and we're thrilled to have you here. So thank you very much, Zoe. We'll talk soon.